introduce myself fully to everyone that's on the call. My name's Gareth McKee. I'm a business solutions consultant with experience. And within experience, I actually look after the application products. So I primarily look after Microsoft 365, Microsoft Business Central, which is an ERP solution, and Microsoft Dynamics. And then as well as that, then for our historical customers, then we look after Pegasus Opera as well. Okay. So the purpose of today's session is to take you through primarily Microsoft Teams, because everyone's came to this in different shapes and forms and sizes over the last while we've been working from home. And it's really to give you an understanding of the product, give you a few tips and tricks for those that have been using it already, and just to see if we can share some of that knowledge that we know about the product for the benefit of yourselves and your organizations. So we'll get you over to that. Now, what I'm going to do now is share my screen with you. So hopefully everyone can see that. And we should be landing in the Microsoft 365 portal. And we'll just let everything catch up with us. That's grand. Okay, so we're in the Microsoft 365 portal. Okay, and this is where we log in to get access to the other 365 applications. So primarily that would be the browser versions of Outlook, OneDrive, the standard Microsoft applications, and then there's various other applications in there that you'll find useful, and certainly we can pick those up at another time. But what we're looking to do today is concentrate on Teams. Now, Microsoft Teams itself is actually a application within the Microsoft 365 stack that exists in 3 locations. So you can access it the way we're going to access it today from a browser. You can also download it as a desktop client, and you can also install it on your mobile phone. Okay, so you can have 3 areas where you can use the application. Okay, typically from the mobile phone point of view, I nearly use that as my 3rd screen. So that's where I check my notifications and so on. So it is handy to have that downloaded. And all 3 areas of the product in terms of where you install them are all very similar in look and feel. Okay, so within the browser here, I'm going to click on Teams, and this will bring me into the Teams browser environment. Okay, and we have our demo team. Now today, for the purpose of the demonstration today, we're using the Microsoft demo, and we are a company called Contoso. As you can see here, that's the company name. Okay, and I'm going to take you through the environment of Teams, explain the areas of the product, and then we'll get into the actual Teams functionality. Okay, just a few caveats with the product. As you can imagine, if you've used Teams, it does change quite a bit in terms of additional functionality. And depending on what day of the week it is, you'll get different sort of Microsoft notifications about the product going forward. Today's no exception. So as soon as I've logged into the product, it is encouraging me within the browser application to download the desktop app. And you can do that on the bottom left-hand side of your screen. And you'll also see here, it's asking me as soon as I come into the product to turn on desktop notifications. Now, when you're using a browser, whether you're using Teams or reading the Daily Mail, you usually get asked about these notifications if you want to turn them on. And when you do turn them on, those notifications live within your browser of choice, be that Chrome, be that Edge, and so on. So I'm going to just turn those on. For the purpose of clarity, these are called banners in Teams. So when it refers in settings to turning on banners or notifying you within a banner, this is what it means. It's the purple box that pops up on the bottom right hand side of your screen. So we're going to turn those on. Okay, now we're going to start off top left hand side of the screen. This grid is the equivalent within the Microsoft 365 product stack of your start menu in Windows. The grid, or the waffle as I like to call it, when you click on that, will take you back to the other Microsoft 365 applications, be that the standard Office applications, OneDrive, Outlook, Planner, and so on. Okay, that's important and nice to know you can bounce into other parts of the 365 environment, and it's good to know that even going forward, Microsoft are hoping to utilize this area for their other applications such as Microsoft Business Central and Microsoft Dynamics, so you're navigating to their product stack from the same place. Okay, same look and feel. Okay, so that's the top. We can see we're using Microsoft Teams, and I'm going to take you across the menu bar at the top of the screen. And we're going to focus first of all on this search bar. Okay, so a lot of people have been coming to Teams primarily over the last while as a meeting tool. So how to have meetings both internally and externally with customers and clients. But we do have customers, and we're going to show you that today, who are using Teams as a source of information, be that messages, chats, files, and folders. And certainly it can be a complement or replacement for your traditional file stores, so servers, desktops, email. And this is where you can search Teams globally as a user within the search bar at the top. So for example, if I put a keyword in here, now this keyword's legal, but imagine this is a colleague's name, a customer name, client name, project name. It all applies. What the system will do here is it lets me see here two locations where the term legal has appeared. First of all, here we've got in bold the term legal, and that basically is indicating that it's found that term within my Teams environment, and I'll show you that in a bit more detail shortly. It's also found a team called Legal and Compliance, and as you can see here, that team exists on my screen. Okay. It would also do the same search for any chats that you'd set up within Teams that you'd given a name, or for colleagues. Okay. So starting here, if I click on where it's legal and bold, that's my keyword, I'll explain what this is doing. So first of all, within the system, it's going to any messages that I've sent or received from colleagues, and it's searching those messages to find out if the legal keyword has been found. And as you can see here, it has. So there was a message between myself and Joni where we were talking about the legal review. Okay. So that's quite a powerful search, and in the demo environment, it's quite minimal in terms of the information contained within it. But if you're starting to use the product for your files and folders across your organization, that's a very powerful search tool. And just to show you, I can click in here to the message, and it will bring it up in context. So it will bring me to the team or the channel where this conversation is being had, and you can see the conversation flow. Okay. The other thing the system's doing when I search for that term of legal is it's searching for files. So any file within Microsoft 365, it's actually looked within the Teams environment and thought, right, here's three files that contain the word legal. What you'll notice though from the files that it's found here is that each of these files lives within a team. So you can see here, there's the launch team, and within the documents, and each of these here, there's the term legal within those documents. What you will notice is that none of these file names contains the word legal. So one of the most powerful things about Microsoft 365 within that Office 365 stack, whether you're using Teams or OneDrive or SharePoint, is the search tool. So not only when you do a search within Microsoft 365 are you searching file names, you're also searching for the content in those documents. So for example, if it was a 100-page report where Gareth McKee's mentioned on page 57, searching from Gareth McKee would bring that document up. So it's far more powerful than anything you get on the traditional systems, such as the a server environment, for example. Okay, so you can see these files here, nice and straightforward. The other thing you can do that you might not be aware of within the search box is commands. Now, commands could be lots of different things, but the way you bring them up is by doing a / and you get this big list of commands. These are quick commands that allow you to do things quickly within the Teams environment. For example, your status or your presence can be changed. So I can do / away, and it'll give me an answer. Your status has been set to away. And if I look over here to Megan's profile in the demo environment, you can see here the status is the amber light. That means that she's away from her desk. It also allows you, for those people that are new to Teams, to go / what's new. And that brings you straight to the help section of Teams and straight into the what's new. Okay. Again, for anyone that's used the product over any length of time, as I said at the start, you will see Teams change and flow as Microsoft brings out lots of different pieces of functionality. For example, today was the first time I've seen the video calling no longer restricted to just 4 people on screen. It's now up to 8. So those nice wee tweaks that we see in the roadmap are starting to come through. And this what's new section is where you can start to see what they are. And you've also got the standard help and training sections within the helps guide as well. Okay. So we'll not go through this in too much detail, but I want to kind of show you the power of the product. Okay. So for example, in the product, there is various different what are called bots. They're chat bots. And what that is basically is the ability to understand and deal with teams as though it was a person in your organization. It's a bit like Alexa. You ask it questions, it gives you results. One of the easiest way to demonstrate this to you, and one you could try straight out of the box, is where you come into the command line and do /who, and it says now type a question. So I can start to ask the system questions about my data or my colleagues that exist in Teams. So if I basically put in a question and say who, excuse me a second, is Lee, that's asking the bot a question, very basic question. And what will happen is the screen changes, the chat bot appears on screen. It's called a who bot, and it goes away and it's found out who Lee is. And it's shown me here that this is Lee, this is what Lee looks like. This is the various ways I can contact Lee through Teams, be that messages, be that a video call, standard call, or even email. And I can do clever things then where I could start to ask the bot different questions about Lee, and you've got these nice quick buttons for doing that. So who's Lee's manager? And it goes away and it checks, and it comes back and it says I found the manager of Lee. In this case, it's Patty. And then you can start then to see who these people work with. Now, how the system identifies that is based on the interaction they have across the organization. So the emails they send, the conversations they have, the files that they collaborate on are all being measured by the Microsoft 365 product. So I can very simply click this box and go works with, and it asks the bot the question and it comes back. And in this case, Patty, these are the people that work with Patty. So you can see the people that she's interacting with. And you can take this to another step. So if you've got lots of documentation and people discussing processes, projects, customers, you can ask the who bot who knows about something. So in our case, as an IT provider, we sell Sophos antivirus. So who knows about Sophos would go and give me the results of the people that talk about that product the most. So that's on average is the people I need to speak to. So we'll dip into these in a bit more detail in terms of showing you what else exists in the product in terms of bots, and see how you get on with those. But basically, it's just to show you the power of the product itself. Now, over on the right-hand side, then, every time you sign into Teams, or in fact, any part of Microsoft 365, you will have a profile icon. In this case, I'm signed in as Megan, and we already know Megan's status here is Amber, which means she's away. And if you click on that profile picture, you'll see here we've got Megan Bowen, and underneath that we've got her status options. And this is where you as a user can control whether you're available, away, busy, do not disturb, and so on. So I can come in here and just say that I'm now as Megan available. Okay. So a bit like Outlook, you also have the ability to set automated messages within Teams, and this is functionality that's quite new. So if somebody was to reach out to you as an individual on Teams, but you're busy doing something, or you're on leave, or you're not able to respond, you can set your message. So if you click on set message within your profile, you can say, sorry, I am busy. Okay. And you can also instruct the system to actually reach out to another colleague. Okay. And you can say, right, please reach out. Now, what you want to do here is you want to tell the system who to reach out to. And how you draw attention to people within your Teams environment is you do a shortcut called an @ You do an @ mention. And when you do the @ symbol, you can see what's happened. It's allowed me to pick people from a list. These are the people that I typically work with. So that's why they've been given preference. And I could pick, in this case, Patty, and put her in. When it brings a member of your team in as an @ mention, it always brings them in full name. Okay, that gets quite exhaustive if you're constantly in chats. So a quick tap of the backspace button removes the surname, and you can start then being slightly more informal. Okay. When you've got your message typed, your person picked, you then decide to switch on the message. So when people message you, in this case Megan, it will now play this message. It informs them to reach out to Patty. But because you've mentioned Patty, Patty will also get those notifications, so she's aware that the message has been effectively passed on at that point. And then you can decide how often you want this to play for. Is it an hour? Is it 4 hours? Is it a day? Is it a week? Or is it a custom time frame? So you can play that and then hit done, and you'll see your status changing up here at the top. So it actually tells you then that you've got this switched on. Okay. The other thing you can do within this profile and within Teams itself is as you start using it, you will get more and more messages and communications, some of which you may want to save. So those saved messages, I will show you how to bookmark those, but those bookmarks, when you save them, will live under your profile in saved messages. And it's just a nice place to go in and track what you've actually saved in the system. Underneath that, then we've got settings, which we're going to bounce into a second. But if you want any quick keyboard shortcuts, version details, or how to download the desktop or mobile app, you'll also get those underneath your profile. So very quickly, we're going to go into settings. So settings in Teams kind of gives you a flavor of the sort of control that you can get as the end user without having to interact with IT. So nice and simple in general. It's the theme. Would you want the standard light theme, dark theme, or high contrast, and your language options? It's also then privacy. So if you have a status of do not disturb, no one can contact you unless you decide to select people for priority access. And you can also do the flip of that. You can block contacts then from contacting you as well in here. You can also choose then to switch on read receipts, so you can let people know when you've read their message. So it just basically pops up beside the message as an eye to show that it's viewed. You can switch that off if you wish. And throughout Teams as a platform, you will get asked, coming off video calls, for example, about your feedback. So was the call good? Did you have any issues? Would you like to rate the product? You can switch those off if they become a bit of a pain. You can come in here and switch those off. The other thing you might want to consider then is your privacy options, again, as an individual user. And those privacy options, we'll just bring those up here, are quite exhaustive, and you can actually choose what you want to do with those in terms of notifications and the like. Okay, so within notifications here, you can see I've got sections within the system. I can choose what happens when somebody mentions me, choose what happens when somebody messages me, or other. And I typically leave these as the default options, and I've been using the product for quite some time, and I've never felt the need to change them. But you do get people inquiring about, the banners that pop up. How do I switch those off? Well, you can control where you see notifications in here. So any notifications where you're being at mentioned, for example, so at Gareth, or in this case at Megan, I can choose to have an email and a banner. Just a banner, or only ever show in the feed itself within the chats. So you can control this to your own specific requirements. And then Teams is a tool out of the box. It is a calling tool. It is a tool for doing video chats and calls, teams to teams. But going forward in the sort of history and the roadmap of the product, it will be a replacement for Skype for Business. And it will also integrate then with other third-party telephony providers. So BT are working on integration from different third-party sources like Vodafone. And if you use Teams effectively like a soft dialer for your business, you can then control within the call section here, call forwarding, voicemail, ringtones, and accessibility features such as text to speak. Okay, so that's where you can control your settings. Okay. Now we're going to focus on the left-hand side here of our Teams functions, okay? Now we'll take you through this in a certain way, but I want to sort of point out what each of these are, first of all, and then what you might be seeing different on your screens. So everybody that uses Teams, be that on a desktop app or in the browser, will see it in this format, and you will get an activity feed, a chat option for chatting one-to-one or one-to-many with your colleagues, Teams, which is the bread and butter of the product, a calendar for viewing your day and managing meetings, and then calls where you can then manage your calls, be that Teams to Teams or Teams to an outside source with either calling plans or third-party integration. And then files. That's where you get a view of all the files you've got access to within Teams and other cloud storage solutions, by default OneDrive, but I'll show you a few things you can do in here as well. What you will notice though, maybe different to what you see on your screen, is I have now got this WhoBot on screen. And that's because I have interacted with that particular application within the Teams environment, and it's actually displayed it here, the left-hand side. The reason for that is this is blank for a reason. You can bolt in other applications to this options bar on the left-hand side of your screen. So if I click on the ellipsis here, within the product, there's Microsoft applications already showing for you. So for example, within Microsoft 365, you get a planner app, and that planner app's for you managing process where you've got a schedule. Maybe you've got something with a start, middle, and end, that you've got tasks you want to assign to people and due dates. You can do light planning within the application. You might be taking notes on OneNote. You've got a shifts app for managing shifts and scheduling, which also works really well with the mobile app, so people can get their shifts, request holidays, and so on. And then you've got other tools called Stream, which is iPlayer for your business. It's where all of your internal videos can be stored for easy access. Okay. The other thing in here you'll notice is the Dynamics 365 product set. That's where CRM and the ERP applications live. And this also has integrated functionality with Teams. So if I pick one of these, in this case, Dynamics 365, it will actually bolt the product into the left-hand side of my screen. Okay. And you can see here, and this is where if I had the integration set up, I could start using this as a bot. So how many leads do I have for a specific customer? Who looks after a specific customer, and so on. So if you're managing a customer base, the CRM package can also then integrate with Teams. And anything you use here down the right hand side that is an addition or a snap-on application, you can force it to always live in this bar by right clicking and then just click pin, and it means it lives there every time you come back into Teams. And just to give you an idea of how exhaustive this application is and how much it integrates with other tools, if I just go into more apps here, this is the app store effectively for the Microsoft Teams product. So if you have came to Teams, like I know some people have on the call today, because you've been using products like Zoom, if for any reason Zoom still ticks a box for you in terms of video conferencing, but you like all the other aspects of Teams, you can bolt Zoom in to your Teams environment. You can do the same for things like Trello as a planner app, or maybe you just don't like OneNote and you've always lived in Evernote. You can do the same for that. So this is quite an exhaustive list of products that you can then snap into Teams. And as long as you've got either the download, the rights to use it, the subscription, then you can actually snap this in and start using some of that additional functionality. Okay. So that's just to show you here. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go in and I'm going to show you, as I said, the bread and butter of the application. This is the Teams element. So this might be slightly new to you if you've been pretty much using Teams as a method to communicate while we're all working from home or we're all in our different areas at the moment. But Teams is more than just a communication tool for meetings and phone calls. It is a way for you to manage information and flow information around your organization. And as I said at the start, it can be a complement or replacement for traditional file repositories, such as a server environment. Okay. So as you can see here on screen, I've got a list of teams that already exist within this demo organization. I've got a product launch team. I've got a team for business development, and I've got a company-wide team called Contoso. Okay, and we're going to pretty much focus on the business development team for this session. When you click on a team, the team then opens up into what's known as channels. Okay, so these are almost like sub teams, and channels allow you to organize information within your team, be that conversations, be that files, be that other third-party applications. So the logic behind this, if you've never used Teams before, is to think about how you currently work. So let's take an example. Let's say, for example, on a server, there's a folder called directors, and it's only accessible by the directors within your organization. More than likely, as a folder, when you click on that, it will be divided into subfolders. So you might have an area within that directors folder for reports, for finance information, for admin, for process, for company information, and so on and so on. So on a traditional server, you have some form of logic in terms of how you split out your files and your subfolders. And the same principle applies to teams. When you create a team, it has to have a purpose and you have to bring people to it. And then you have to decide how you're going to carve that information up for the benefit of that team into channels. and it just helps organize things that bit more. Each team that you create will always have one channel by default. That's the general channel. And when you click on the general channel, you'll always get these three areas for every team and channel you create: a place for posts or conversations, a place for files, so that could be files or folders, and a wiki section, which is all to do with notes and how you can take notes and use it as a bit of a scratch pad, almost like a cut down OneNote. Okay. Beside that, then you can then start making your teams or your channels unique for the purpose of what you need to use them for. So with the tab, you can bolt in other areas of Microsoft 365. So again, things like Excel, Word, SharePoint, if you're already using that, Power BI reports, Dynamics CRM. And then again at the bottom, doesn't have to be Microsoft. You've got all of these other applications that you can use to then bring into Teams. And it could be something as simple as a website. So you could have a company website, a supplier website, places where you talk about your purchases, and you've always got links to supplier information. So it can be lots of things to lots of people, and it's all able for you to build it from scratch. And I'm going to show you how quickly you can build a team in a second. Okay. So each team that you create, in this case, the business development team, you can go into the ellipses on the right-hand side of that team and you can control it as the team owner. You can hide it so it stays out of your way, but doesn't delete. Okay, so you can sort the screen out so it's nice and tidy for you. You can quickly add channels and add members, or if you want, you can leave a team. As the team owner, you can edit a team, and then you can also grab a link to the team. So let's say, for example, you created a team and you wanted people to join it. You could grab the link, send the link via email, and that would bring people to the team. Okay. And you can also do things like manage tags. What this means is that you can bring groups of people together under a heading, a bit like in the old world, a distribution group within email. So within your social team, you're going to start organizing your Christmas dinner. You could bring the people organizing the Christmas dinner together under a tag of Christmas dinner committee. Okay, so you can organize people into bundles or pockets of groups. Okay. So what I'm going to focus on here, first of all, using this business development team, is the manage team function. And within the manage team function, this is my dashboard as the team owner, as Megan in this case, of where I can see information about my team. So as you can see, Megan is the owner of the team. And underneath Megan, if I click on members and guests, I have 16 other people that are team members. Okay. Two ways you can split people within teams. They can be members. That means that they are part of your organization. They're licensed to use Teams, and you're bringing them in for internal use. Or you can have guests, which means you can bring external users into the Teams environment as guest access. But guest access isn't switched on by default. It's switched on behind the scenes within the admin channel. And the same goes for external communication. If you wanted to externally communicate with somebody using the Teams app, but perhaps they're on another tool like Skype for Business, you can do that, albeit with the right settings switched on in the background. But out of the box, guest and external are switched off. So as you can see here, I can see my team, all 16 people. I can see what they do as a job. In this case, in the demo environment, we actually have location information, and we've also got their current role within the team. These guys are all members, but I can click on the member option and I could promote Adele here to a team owner, and she then has control and access on a par with what Megan has. I can also bring in other members, new members to the team on the right hand side. Okay. Beside that, then pending requests. This will make more sense. This will show you setting up a team, but you do have the option, if you create a team, to give that team a code. So people can find your team and request to join it by using a joining code. And this is where you do the accept or deny requests within the team's management section. Each channel within your team then can be controlled within here. And as you can see here, we have got within this team a general channel, that's our default. And then the channels that has been created for the purpose of this team. So business development have decided they're going to have an area to share knowledge, an area to discuss opportunities, and a separate area to discuss leads and pipeline. And this is where you can control then what your team see. So you as the owner can switch on or off which channels you see and which channels you want your members or your guests to see. What I would say about this, just from an onboarding point of view, is when you don't have any of these show for members ticked, the channels are all collapsed. So when somebody comes into the team for the first time, they might only see general channel, and then there's an ellipsis to explore the team and open it up. What we find is that people tend to be slightly lazy on that and not make it obvious that other channels exist. So it is best just to switch these on so that those channels are automatically shown to the team members, so they're always in full and not as a collapsed view. Okay. Each channel in this case has a description, and I'll show you how to do that. And it also has a channel type. And where you see the globe, that's all standard channels. Okay. So we'll show you how to do alternatives to that, but these channels are all standard. What that means in a nutshell is if you create a team and you're brought into that team as a member, if their team and the channels within it are standard, all members can see all channels. There'll be no restrictions. Okay. So you have to bear in mind that you wouldn't set up an HR team, bring a number of members, another member of staff in, and then wonder why they can see confidential information. It's because when they're a member of the team, they will see everything unless you specify channels to become private. And I'll show you that. You can also see last activity. Again, not being exhaustive then, each team has a settings option. And this is where you as the team owner can control what happens within your team. And this might be as an organization, or it might be on a team by team basis where it's appropriate to have certain features. So every team can have a picture, so you can brand it. You can also control what your members are able to do. So here's where you can control things, giving members the ability to update channels or create them. By turning that off, you're basically ensuring that your team's not going to run away with itself with all these different channels popping up. So you can see there's a lot of options in here, and you can control those as the team owner as to what your members are able to do. You can also do the same for your guests. If guest access was switched on, you can limit what guests are able to do within the environment. You should also can control people's ability to at mention. So actually, you can switch off that function. And this is where you can generate your joining code for your team. If you want people to easily come into a team, you can create a code. Within each team, then, there's the ability to have, it's called fun stuff. I'll explain more about the reasons why it exists, but it's GIFs, emojis, and stickers. And you can also choose what your moderation levels are going to be. Now, these come into their own at an admin level, but as a team owner, you can set your moderation to moderate or strict, and the system will start then using intelligence then to block profanity and so on. So you can switch that on if you wish as a team owner. And then each team that you create, there's an analytics tab. And this is really useful, especially if you're using Teams for onboarding purposes and you want people to use it and you want evidence that they're using it. So in here under analytics, you can see as a summary, I've got 17 team users. I've got posts and replies. I've got apps in use, and I've got SharePoint files in use and the size of those. And you can also see over time, you've got a Teams usage chart. So over the last 7 days, I can see peaks and troughs here, and then it's petered out. Okay. So if you're using Teams for things like pricing, for example, and you create time and a bit of blood, sweat, and tears creating that pricing team, and all of a sudden all of your quotes that are going out of your company are wrong, then that tells you people aren't using your Teams, and you can then see that from an analytic point of view. If this line's completely flat, nobody's engaging, maybe they're not aware of it, maybe they need re-educated, and so on. And then finally, you've got apps. These are the third-party apps that can be controlled at an admin level or bolted in as the team owner. So you can snap in those third-party apps for the use within your team's environment. Okay, so it is quite a lot of information, obviously, to take on board there. But as a team owner, you've got a lot of control. And the idea is that you can do this yourself without constantly having to lean on IT. Okay, if you think of the old world, constantly having to ring your support desk to get distribution groups set up or areas within the server set up for files and so on. So I'm going to show you how easy it is to get to that point. Okay, so at the bottom of Teams, you can see here we've got join or create a team, and that's where I can click on the option, and I've got this dashboard. I can create a team or join one with a code. That's where a team member could put the code in and ask to join. Okay. But we're a team owner, so we're going to create a team. So if I create a team from scratch, I always get these two options. Exactly that. Build a blank team from scratch, or create a team from an existing team or an existing 365 group. So just to explain what 365 groups are, they're things like a planner tab where you've created a plan to work on a project within Planner. And when you create that for that customer, it creates a group in the background. A group also might be a selection of people that you've brought together, let's say a support group. So you've created a group in Outlook, and that group has a name called support, an email address called support at, and an area for files. And if over time that group grows and it then becomes relevant to turn a group into a team, you can from this create from option. In reality, most people are building teams from scratch because they're really not they don't have the environment in the first place to start copying from. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to build a team from scratch. So if I click on this, in the real world, you won't get these three options. Okay, you can see here I've got private, public, and organization wide. When you do this yourselves, you'll only have these first two options. So a private team is just that. It will only be you as the owner will have visibility of the team until you bring people to it. If it's public, once the team's created, it will sit in this dashboard and your team will be aware of it. Okay. So that's nice if you want a team to be created as an organization wide team and people request to join it, but you wouldn't want to create a team that's public, for example, HR or any other reason that would be more of a private reason. The other reason for creating private teams when you're starting to get your head around teams is it means then your teams aren't visible until you say they are. So you can build it and make your mistakes and get your team ready for then consumption with your members and your guests. So I'm going to do a private team. So simply what we need to do here is we need to give the team a name, and we're going to use the directors as a template here. So this is going to be a team for the directors only. So when I hit create, the system goes away, and a few seconds later, the guy with the red glasses telling us that's us done. And what's actually happened in the background is that team has been created, but it's actually been created on the back of SharePoint. So SharePoint is the back end of Teams, and Teams is the front window to that SharePoint environment. So once it's built, you then can bring people to the team. So I'm going to bring in some people. So we'll bring in Lee, and we'll bring in Patty, and we'll bring in Christy. Okay. And we're going to add those three people. And when you add those three people in, it will then give me an option. Are these going to be members with Megan as the ultimate owner? Or would I like one of these guys to be an owner alongside me? So you can have multiple team owners if you wish. So let's just say for talk's sake, we make Patty an owner. Okay. And then we hit close. And we have now created our directors team with a general channel. If I wanted to create another sub area within this team, another channel, it's dead easy to do. Just come across to the ellipsis and then we go to add channel. And this is where I can then give this a name. Okay. And when I get into the channel itself, every channel you set up by default will be a standard channel. And I can actually go in, I can go and do the private. Okay. Just bear with me a second, folks. Sorry about that. Okay, so I can make this private. Okay. What that means then is if a team's got multiple users and everyone who has standard access are able to access the team, I can then restrict it further by making a specific channel private. When I make a specific channel private, I can then name certain users to only get access to that channel. Okay, so in this case, I'm only going to bring in Patty then in terms of the private ownership of this channel. So the two people that can see it will be Megan as the owner and Patty because she's been brought in. Okay. and I can then create that channel. And you can see here, it's got a padlock, it's private. So that's a way for you to ring fence your team so that if there are going to be certain areas within it that require channels, you can restrict members' access by making them private and only bringing in the relevant members to that private channel. Okay. So once you've got your team built out, as I mentioned, you will have sections within each channel. So we'll focus on the director's general channel. We've got a place for posts, a place for files, and as I mentioned, the scratch pad for notes within the wiki. So at the moment we're in posts, and this is really the conversations that are happening within your team. So as you can see, within the Microsoft stack, they pretty much want you to be able to be empowered to use the product. So you usually get very graphical representations of how-to guides, so you can come in here and learn more about adding people, creating channels, and so on. You'll also get a bit of an audit trail as to what's happened within your team or your channel. So you can see here that we've added Christy and we've added Patty and promoted Patty to team owner. So this window here that we're in for post is your conversation window. And this is where you can start chatting to your team. And this is how you can decide as an organization, does Teams become an area for collaboration and communication? And really what happens typically, not all the time, but typically what you're trying to do is remove that internal communication from Outlook. So you're not constantly communicating via email, that your conversations are more fluid with the teams and the channels that you're a member of. When you're actually typing in here and you're starting a conversation, if you say hi, you're not notifying anyone of your conversation. The only way they will see it is if they're coming past the team and they see that you said hi, or they notice in the teams they're a member of, the text goes bold. That means there's been some team activity and they would need to investigate what that is. So to help flow your information, what you want to do is use the at mention option where you can grab someone's attention, in this case, Christy, hit backspace to remove her surname to keep it a bit more informal. And you can ask Christy a question. Can you review this document? Okay. And that will post to the team, and Christy will get a notification that Megan has mentioned her. And then you'll see the conversation flow in here. This is how you reply. So when you click on reply, you can come in and you can type your message and you can at mention somebody back. Okay. The other way to acknowledge messages is not just replying, but if you hover over the right hand side here, you can give things a thumbs up, a like, a love, and so on. So you can simply give something a thumbs up to say you've read it, you've seen it, you've acknowledged it. And within that wee menu here, you've got an ellipsis. And this is where you can do things like if you've made a spelling mistake, you can edit your message, you can delete it if you want to delete it and then retype it again. You can copy it, you can fire it out to Outlook for further conversations and email. And this is where you also can save and bookmark your messages. So when you bookmark them, they'll appear under your profile. Okay. So down at the bottom here in our conversations, you can see I've got some other options. Each conversation you have will typically always be in the same format, but if you click on the format tool underneath conversation, this gives you more scope to do things like format your text, insert bullet points, put in URLs or code or tables, or even change the urgency of the message. You can take that slightly further when you click on where it says new conversation, and you can turn this into announcements. So you can give the communications headlines, you can brand it, you can color it, you can make it company specific, and you can start to communicate newsletters and so on. So attention grabbing headlines. You can also control them when you're in this option if you would like people to be able to reply to your message. So if you're instructing people to do something and it's not up for debate, you can actually restrict the replying options to just owners or moderators so that standard members can't respond in line to that communication. And you could also do things like post your message in multiple channels. So if you needed a message to go across multiple teams or multiple channels without you having to retype it 10 times, come in here, click on post in multiple channels. You'll see the channel you're currently in, and then you can move to the side and hit select channels. And this is where I can then start picking a multitude of locations to actually send this to. And this starts to then bring these in. So you can post across your team's environment for the teams that you're a member of. Okay. So as well as that, then Microsoft are big believers in softening language. So you get out of the formality of Outlook and you move into a slightly more informal space where conversation flows. And sometimes you need to perhaps filter that language or soften your language. And that's why they leave by default emojis, which you can access here, GIFs, and stickers. So you can turn these off as you've seen, but it allows you to make the space more all-encompassing across your organization and soften what people say. You also have the ability as well to jump into ad hoc meetings. So with all of us working from home, we're probably some of us glad you're not in the office environment where somebody's tapping you on the shoulder. Do you have a minute? Or I sent you an email and can we go and talk about it and so on. You can't do the same thing within teams on an ad hoc basis. So within each team conversation, without you scheduling a meeting, you get access to the ad hoc meeting options. You'll see that down here. It's just a wee camera icon, Meet Now. And if you click on the Meet Now option, it bounces you out within your conversation to the meeting option where you can give this a topic of training. Okay. And you can switch on your camera, you can schedule the meeting for another time, or you can simply hit Meet Now. And that would bring you and your team members together for an ad hoc meeting. So it's only the people within this team. Okay. You also have the ability then, if you click on the ellipses, to do things like praise, where you can praise members of staff. So you can send them badges and messages acknowledging what they've done. Again, helps with onboarding. You can also then put in other options such as Microsoft Forms for collecting information via surveys, locations where people are based, and weather and so on. And then this gets to the point where it goes back to that big application source. You can start bolting in other third-party applications. Okay. So in this example that we've done so far, I've asked Christy to review a document, and I'm going to show you how you can collaborate within Teams on documents. And in order to do that, I'm going to show you how to get files and folders into Teams in the first place. And I'm going to do that here within this general channel and go to Files. This will give me, when it comes up here, a look and feel very similar to OneDrive, if you've used OneDrive. And this is where I can then decide, right, I'm going to create a new file or folder. So let's say, for example, I want to create a folder within this location just to be more organized. I click New, I click Folder, and it'll ask me for a name. So let's just do training. Okay. And it will create a training folder. And it gives the folder or the file a wee tomahawk that indicates that it's new. It shows you that it was modified a few seconds ago and who modified it. So there'll always be a trace and a check on what's going on. If I jump into this folder, obviously it's blank and I want to upload information to it. So I do that by using the upload option, and I can upload individual files or folders. So I'm going to go to folders and I'm going to go to documents on my machine, and I'm going to upload these demo documents. And it will then start uploading. You'll see here, and if you want, you can click on it if you're fast enough, and you'll see them all populating. Okay. So you can see here, Tomahawk's back, Contoso Electronics, and I've now got 3 documents in here that are now ready for consumption within the team. You can, if you want, sync these documents back down to your local device in much the same way you can with OneNote. Grab links to them and send that via message or email. Download them to your device, or you can open everything up in SharePoint. SharePoint gives you more document control, but what Microsoft are aiming to do for the rest of 2020 is to make Teams more relevant in that SharePoint world, so that a lot of the SharePoint controls will start to then migrate into Teams. You'll already see that if I click on the ellipses here behind the document, where I can do things like open in SharePoint, or I can check documents out. You'll be able to apply your tabs, your metadata, and your rules about your documentation in Teams just as you can in SharePoint going forward. So let's bounce back to your posts here, and let's assume Christy has asked me, yes, I can help you, but what document are you talking about? Well, in each conversation, I've got an attached option, And if I click that, it will bring me into one of three locations. It will ask me, do I want to upload documents from my PC? So let's say they are not in Teams, I can upload them. I could bounce out to my OneDrive and upload a document that sits in my OneDrive and it's personal to me. I can then make that fit for Teams consumption, or I can go to Teams or channels that I have access to and grab the documentation I need. So in this case, that's what I'm going to do. So if I hit browse and go into the training folder I've just created and into Contoso Electronics and grab this spreadsheet, we've now got two options. This spreadsheet might be my master copy, so I could upload a copy of it to the team and allow people to use the copy. Or what you tend to do in Microsoft 365 is instead of you sending information to people, you bring people to your information, and that's where you live in links. So I can simply send a link to the document, and what I'm doing is bringing the team back to that source file. So you see it will populate. It'll allow me to type a message if I want, and I can hit forward. And this now is pasted into the team, and if I want to open the document, it takes me to the document within Teams. So I'll be looking at an Excel document here, but I've not left the Teams environment, but I have the option once it opens here, if I want to bounce out to the desktop version of Excel, I can. Now, for those of you that aren't using Teams or any aspect of 365 for files and folders, one of the massive wins you get here is the fact that now that you're working on this in a collaborative fashion, each member of your team can work on this Excel document at exactly the same time. And the same applies to Word and the same applies to PowerPoint. So you can now truly collaborate on documents rather than what you're normally faced with, which is somebody's in the Excel spreadsheet and it's now read only for everyone else. So true collaboration, if you're using 365 either from a OneDrive point of view or Teams, you can bring people together and work on the document together. Okay. So as you go through Teams, what you'll find is, and no doubt some of us are thinking of it, you're going to be a member of lots of different teams and channels. The activity and the communication is going to be bouncing around Teams. How do you see what's going on? And typically you do that with the activity tab here. So if I click on activity, you can see there is a list of activity in this feed where it's telling me where I've been mentioned, where somebody's replied to me, and so on. Okay. Now, over time, that will grow, and that is always persistent. It always lives on screen, so you can filter the information in your activity. So I can click on the funnel, and I can type a keyword that I want to search for, such as legal, and it will restrict the view just to that relevant message. Or I can actually take it a bit further and use the ellipsis to only look at messages I've yet to read. So you can filter your view if you've missed any messages, or where you've specifically mentioned, or across your organization, topics that are trending. So this might be company-wide teams and channels. Maybe you're getting ready for an event. Maybe you're doing charity work. Maybe there's a large project. The more activity happens, the more likely that is going to trend through Teams. And it's all based on all of the analytics that happens in the background with the Microsoft product stack. So that's your activity. The other thing in here as well then you have access to is outside of the Teams and channel environment, you have chat. And chat is another way for you to have conversations with the people in your organization or external if you switch that on, so that you can have one-to-one or one-to-many chats outside of Teams or channels. And again, this sits in a persistent mode, which means that they will always remain on screen, so you can then flick back to any chats you've had historically. And what you'll notice here is I asked the WhoBot a question earlier on in the session. It remains as a persistent chat. So the bots are behaving like people, and I can go back into that chat. The other thing will happen with meetings as well. So if you create a meeting, just like you're in now with ourselves, these will always stay as chats as well in the background. So when you come off this session, have a look at what you've left behind you. You actually will be in a chat, and that chat you will be in will have a place where chat has happened, files that have been uploaded and discussed within the meeting, meeting notes that you've taken within your meeting, and if you have done a whiteboard electronically within Teams, the whiteboard will be there to play back and view. To create a chat for the first time, you use the icon up in the top bar here. So beside your command bar, you just click on chat. It brings you to the chat option, and you can pick the people that you want to bring into the chat, and you can bring in multiple people if you wish. Okay. And if there's any chat history between you and the people you want to chat with, it will exist here. Okay. So you can have exactly the same functionality in chat as you have in conversations. So you can format it, you can attach files, you can put emojis and GIFs, and you can praise. You can also, if you want to put urgency on your messages, use the delivery option, the exclamation mark, and you can have standard urgency, important, or urgent. And urgent can replay your message every 2 minutes, up to 20 minutes, or until somebody physically picks it up. So you can use that if you want to be a pain, or if there's a specific business requirement to get an important message out. Maybe a customer is needing out of our support or ad hoc support, things like that. You can get a message to replay up until somebody picks it up. Okay. When you create your bring your people into your chat and you create your chat, you can give this a name. So here it's called training, and I could change that. I can bounce out to a video call or just a standard voice call within Teams, or I can bring in new members to the chat. One of the beautiful things about chat is that when you bring in a third person or a fourth person, you get the option to restrict their view of the historical chat. So if you don't want somebody to see what you've been talking about, but you do want to bring them into a chat, you can then say, I'm going to bring you in, but you're not seeing any historical chat. Okay. So once we bounce off that, just conscious of time, then I'll talk you through here and we'll finish up within meetings. But in Teams, you do have a section for calls. And when you have the app installed or you're using the browser or your mobile phone, without you adding anything to your licensing, you can call each other Teams to Teams. So you can have voice calls from one Teams application to another, and the same for video. But when Skype for Business goes next year as a product, this will be the landing screen for Skype for Business. So if you did have this as a soft dialer or you took Microsoft up on their call plans, this can be your telephony system within your organization. You also have access to files within the environment, and files can be files that you've opened recently, files that you have access to within the Teams environment. So you'll get a big list here of all of the files you have access to. So as you can see, or you can bounce out really quickly to your OneDrive. Okay, so this is my business OneDrive. That's obviously part of my demo environment. Very quickly, one of the things that are useful for people to know is we do see people go into OneDrive, for example, and downloading a file and then re-uploading it to Teams, and you don't have to do that. Without leaving this screen, I can come into my OneDrive section, pick the file that I would like to move to a team, in this case, the sales invoice template, and up here decide to move or copy that somewhere. So if I hit move, for example, I can move it somewhere in my own OneDrive, or I can click on browse teams or channels, pick the team that I want to move it to, the area that I want to move it to, in this case, general, and into the training section I created earlier on, and I can just hit move. And you can do the flip of this in OneDrive. In OneDrive, you'll see the ability to move something from OneDrive to Teams. Okay, so that's a nice shortcut if you want to start populating Teams without having to download and upload. Okay, so we're going to finish up, just conscious of time here, in our Teams calendar. Okay, so on the left hand side, we're going to go into calendar, and what this shows you is your personal view of today, the 4th of May. And you can see here in the demo environment, we've got some meetings that are occurring. Now this red line will move down your screen. And as that red line touches the time that the meeting's happening, it will activate the meeting. And you'll have a join option here, just as you see when you join the meeting today to come into this session. What that means in the current environment, and I know personally and experience, we find this, is we are living in Teams as you would expect. Because we're not in the office, we're bouncing between internal meetings and customer meetings and so on. So I use this as almost my daily plan. As this line hits my meeting, I can join it. When the meeting finishes, the line's moved on and the next meeting becomes active. Okay. I'm going to show you how to create meetings within this, and then we'll give you some of the tools that you can use to help present and then view those going forward. So anytime you're in this calendar, you always get access to Meet Now. that allows you to bounce into an ad hoc meeting without a schedule and then go and bring people to it. Okay. But mostly we'll be creating meetings where we're giving it a date and a time, just like you do in Outlook. And you can create team meetings in Outlook or here. Okay. It's basically the same and look and feel with a couple of caveats. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a meeting and I'm going to give this a reason for training. And I'm going to bring in the members of the training committee that I need to bring in. So I'm going to bring in Lee, I'm going to bring in Christy, and I'm going to bring in Adele. Okay. He says, no, we'll bring in Patty. No, it doesn't like it. Okay, we'll keep those two in. So just like in Outlook, you have the ability of setting your date and your time for your meeting. Okay. You can also then set up your meeting occurrence, whether that's a one-off or repeat. Okay. Now, when you create a meeting in Teams, that meeting, as I've already showed you, has a place for chats and a place for meeting minutes and a place for files. So if the meeting only ever exists in your calendar, if you want to go back to that information, you'd have to go back to the date and time the meeting occurred, open it up in your calendar, and you'd get access to that information. Or alternatively, scroll down your chat window till you find the meeting, and then that would give you access to files, chats, whiteboards, and so on. But mostly what we're doing within Teams is we're having meetings about areas of the business, and perhaps we're having meetings that already about areas that already exist as teams or channels. So what you can do here is you've got the ability of telling the system when you have your meeting about training that you want it to occur in a specific team or channel. So I can say, right, this is going to be in business development and it's going to be within knowledge share. So when the meeting's over, that's the location that the meeting minutes, the notes, the chats, the recordings, the whiteboards will all exist. Okay. And on the flip of that, you can also do the same thing as locations. So in the background, as an administrator within Teams, you could set up real life locations to have meetings in, be it boardroom, conference rooms, and so on. And that can be linked to the technology in that room, for example, a Polycon conferencing unit. Or if you're going forward, if we think about what we might be faced with, these could be virtual locations, virtual boardrooms, virtual training suites that you set up, and that's where people join virtually. Okay, so you can give your teams and your channels and your meetings a location and a purpose. The nice thing about doing the meeting setup in the Teams environment is you also get access to the scheduling assistant, and that's where I can see who I'm looking to meet with, their current availability, and I can drag the meeting across my days in my calendar until they're all showing as available. Okay, so you can easily get everyone you need for the specific time you need them without constantly having to review all their calendars. Okay, so lastly, we're going to go in here and have a look at the meeting options. Okay, so I'll just come out of this, and just for the purpose of demonstration before we finish, I'm going to take you into the Meet Now option. Okay, so I'm going to Meet Now, and that will bring up our screen, which is our conferencing screen for meetings. So when you go into a meeting, it will be given a name. You can edit. You can switch on or off your camera or your microphone, and we're going to join the meeting. And we'll get a blank slate. This is our meeting deck where we can actually start then to control the meeting that we're in. So when you move your mouse, you will get this control option at the bottom of the screen. Control camera, control microphone. If you want to share your screen, you've got a sharing option. And if you click on the sharing option, this control dock will appear at the bottom of your screen. You can share your full desktop. And in fact, if you've got multiple monitors, you can restrict it to monitor 1 or monitor 2 or monitor 3, depending on how many you have. That's quite heavy on bandwidth. So what you might want to do is only share specific documents. So let's say, for example, I want to present a PowerPoint presentation. Well, what I can do is I can go across and hit browse on the right hand side within the doc. I can pick a location where I know my document exists, so I know it exists in Teams. And I'm going to go in here to the directors team, into general, into training, and into Contoso. And I'm going to pick this Northwind presentation. And when you hit share, it comes up on screen. Now, the difference, the way this works than your standard presentation is that it's not opening PowerPoint. So if you think about trying to work PowerPoint on its own, you get PowerPoint open, you bring up your file, you hit slideshow, and PowerPoint gives you the slideshow on one screen and your controls on the other. That's complicated enough until you mix in some form of collaboration tool or meeting tool, because you have to concentrate on what you're showing, plus you have to control it. And the nice thing about just showing an individual file within Teams, in this case, this PowerPoint, is I can control PowerPoint just from one option. So if I hover over the left-hand side, I've got a forward and back option to move through my slides. So as a presenter, I am seeing what my audience see. I'm not have to concentrate on another screen or control deck. I can simply move through each slide. And what you notice here on the right-hand side is there's an eye currently on this. That eye is open. And what that means is your audience can also control the PowerPoint presentation. But the beauty of that is that they won't affect anyone else that's also watching. It's personal to them. So if somebody does come into a presentation 10 minutes late and you've got the eye open, they could go back and review slides so that doesn't interrupt anyone else. But if you're doing this from a sales point of view and you've got all your pricing at the end of the presentation, it also means they could skip forward and take the surprise away. So you as the presenter control that. So you can click on the eye, close the eye, private viewing is disabled and only you are in control. Everyone else has to watch, okay? The other beauty of the control deck is when you finish with one document and you're then ready to come off the screen or show something else, your audience will be seeing this shared value screen. You bring up your control deck and then you pick the next item or document that you want to share, and it means the transition is nice and smooth. Okay. And you can also do that for multiple documents, or if you wanted out to a whiteboard, for example, so you can collaboratively work on a whiteboard or get your audience to view a whiteboard if they wish. Beside the share option then in the ellipses, this is where you control your device settings. And it's also where you get access to your meeting notes. So when you click on meeting notes, it pops up on the right hand side and you simply hit take notes. This is collaborative again. So when you're taking notes as presenters, those notes will all capture. So if you have one or two people gathering notes in this field, that it will all be saved with your meeting. If you're specifically doing minutes and you want more real estate to take your notes, you can actually bump out here to view notes tab. It will minimize your meeting, keep it on screen, and give you a meeting notes section with you can actually split out into sections a bit like OneNote. So that means that the person taking the minutes have a better look and feel. Okay. And then you've got in your ellipses then the ability to get rid of the clutter on your screen. So if you're struggling for real estate and your audience tell you bits are cut off, you can actually hit full screen and that brings it up on screen. And as we're doing today, you can record your meeting. And after every meeting's finished, that recording's available in Stream, which remembers iPlayer for your business. Okay. Each team or meeting you have has a chat window, so you can actually chat with your audience, and they will all be kept as a persistent chat against the meeting. And then finally, then you've got a participants option where you can show your participants and you can add people and invite them in or mute them or control the lobbies. Okay. So it's quite a simple interface. And when you get your head around the control deck here and sharing, it becomes quite a slick way of engaging either internally with stakeholders, or we use it quite heavily, obviously, at the minute with customers and doing presentations and demos. So it is quite a good solution for that. Okay. So just conscious of time, we're just about 11 minutes over, so appreciate your patience. Okay. So I'm just going to come out of this.
Gareth, I think you're muted there.
Hi, sorry about that. It's because it brought me in late. There's a feature. I probably talked about it. If you are like me and you're coming into a meeting late, it will automatically mute your microphone. And that means that you don't clamber over everyone else as you're coming into the meeting late. So what I was saying, sorry, apologies, is the we'll finish the session. When you come off the call, it will leave you in that chat window, and you'll be able to see the meeting minutes and any notes that have been taken, any chats that have been had. So that's nice to see for your own context. We will be contacting you after the event to get some feedback for today. And I appreciate there's a lot of information in the session, and there's a lot of people in different sort of places with the product in terms of how heavily they're using it or not using it at all. So if you have anything else you'd like to reach out to us about, feel free. If it isn't ourselves, because it's maybe the first time you've came across myself with an experience, reach out to your normal account manager, and they'll be more than willing to help and bring me into the call if need be. So we'll finish up there. Really appreciate your time, and if there's anything you need, feel free to reach out to us. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Gareth.